Sometimes life takes everything from you before it offers you a chance to start over. Ren Doyle knew that feeling all too well. The 45-year-old father had lost his marriage, his business, and nearly his will to keep going. He spent his last few $1,000s on an abandoned cabin in the northern plains. It was supposed to be his escape, a quiet place where he could disappear and rebuild in peace. But when he unlocked the door that first day, he found a pregnant woman standing inside. Her name was Marlee, and she had nowhere else to go. What would you do if your fresh start meant becoming someone else's last hope? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The divorce papers had been in Ren Doyle's glove compartment for 6 months. He didn't know why he kept them there, maybe as a reminder of what he'd lost, or maybe as proof that the Doyle life he'd known for 18 years had actually existed at all. Some days it felt like a dream he'd woken up, from the kind where you can't quite remember the details, only the feeling that something important slipped away while you weren't paying attention. Corinne had been reasonable about it, which somehow made it worse. No shouting, no drama, just a quiet acknowledgement that they'd both stopped trying years ago. The construction business failing had been the final straw, but Ren knew the cracks had started long before that. Late nights at job sites, missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries. The slow accumulation of small absences that eventually added up to a marriage that existed only on paper. Their son Kieran was 17 now, living with Corinne in the house Ren could no longer afford to keep. The boy had taken the divorce with the same quiet resignation as his mother, which told Ren everything he needed to know about how present he'd actually been in his son's life. Their phone calls were brief and awkward, filled with long pauses and careful questions that never quite landed where they were meant to. "You doing okay, Dad?" "Yeah, son." "You?" "Fine." And that would be it. Ren would hang up, feeling like he'd failed some test he hadn't known he was taking. The business had gone under in the spring. Doyle and Sons Construction, though there had never been any sons plural, just the promise of Kieran joining him someday. That dream had died, right alongside the company. Too many jobs delayed by weather, too many clients who couldn't pay, too many loans he'd taken out believing things would turn around. They hadn't. By summer, he'd sold everything that wasn't already claimed by creditors. By fall, he was living in a rented room above a garage, working day labor when he could find it, and wondering what the point of any of it had been. The cabin had been a last-minute decision, a desperate one. He'd seen the listing on a bulletin board at a feed store, handwritten, faded, asking half what any property should cost. 40 acres in the northern plains, cabin included, so far from anything that the nearest town was 40 miles away. The owner had died, the heirs wanted nothing to do with it, and they were willing to sell to anyone with cash, and no questions. Ren had scraped together $4,000. It was everything he had left. He'd driven up on a grey October afternoon with Ash, his 8-year-old shepherd mix, riding shotgun. The dog had been the one thing Corinne hadn't asked for, maybe because she knew Ren needed something to care for, something that still looked at him like he mattered. The drive north had taken 2 days. Ren had watched the landscape change through his truck windows, cities giving way to towns, towns giving way to scattered farmhouses, farmhouses giving way to nothing but grassland and sky. The plains stretched out in every direction, golden and endless under the autumn sun. It was beautiful in a way that made him ache. Beautiful and empty, and exactly what he needed. He'd stopped only for gas and bad coffee, sleeping in the truck bed with Ash curled against his side. The dog didn't ask questions, didn't judge, just pressed his warm body close and breathed steadily in the dark, and that was more comfort than Ren had felt in months. The cabin sat at the end of a rutted dirt road that barely qualified as a driveway. Ren almost missed the turn. The property was surrounded by pine and birch, the trees already losing their leaves to the coming winter. The cabin itself was small, maybe 800 square feet, with a covered porch and a stone chimney. The wood siding was weathered grey, and half the shutters hung crooked, but the roof looked intact and the foundation seemed solid. Ren had sat in the truck for a long time, just staring. This was it. This was what his life had come to. $4,000 and 40 acres of nowhere, so far from everyone who'd ever known him that he might as well have ceased to exist. Ash whined softly, sensing his mood. "Yeah, boy," Ren said quietly. "I know." He'd climbed out of the truck and pulled the rusty key from his pocket. The realtor had mailed it to him along with the deed, no ceremony, no handshake, just a manila envelope with his future inside. The key was old, the kind with an ornate head and a long shaft. It looked like it belonged to a different era, when things were built to last and people stayed in one place long enough to call it home. The porch steps creaked under his weight. Ash bounded up beside him, tail wagging, ready for whatever came next. Dogs were good that way. They didn't worry about the future, didn't mourn the past, just existed in the moment and trusted that their person would figure things out. Ren slid the key into the lock. It stuck at first, resistant after years of disuse, but then turned with a heavy click. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, and froze. There was a woman, standing in the middle of his cabin. She was barefoot, wearing jeans and an oversized flannel shirt that couldn't quite hide the swell of her pregnant belly. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a messy bun. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held equal parts wariness and exhaustion. She'd been folding a blanket when he walked in, and now she stood perfectly still, the blanket clutched in her hands like a shield. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ash pushed past Ren's legs, tail still wagging, and trotted over to investigate. The woman didn't move, but her eyes tracked the dog's approach. When Ash sniffed at her hand, she let him, her fingers uncurling just enough to scratch behind his ears. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't think anyone was coming." Ren found his voice. "This is my property. I just bought it." "I know." She set the blanket down on a table made from scrap wood and 2x4s. "I've been living here since August." He looked around the cabin properly for the first time. It was cleaner than he'd expected. A small fire burned in the stone fireplace. There were supplies stacked neatly along one wall, canned goods, a bag of rice, jugs of water. A sleeping bag was rolled up in the corner. The place smelled like wood smoke and pine, not the musty abandonment he'd anticipated. "Squatting," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." She didn't look away from him, didn't offer excuses or apologies beyond that first one. Just stood there, visibly pregnant and clearly with nowhere else to go, waiting to see what he'd do. Ren's mind raced. He should call someone. The sheriff, probably, though he had no idea if this county even had one. He had a legal right to his property. She was trespassing. But something about the way she stood, their shoulders back, chin up despite the fear in her eyes, made him hesitate. "What's your name?" he asked. "Marlee." "I'm Ren," he gestured at the tomb. Dog, who had settled at Marlee's feet like he'd known her for years. "That's Ash. He's friendly." "I can tell." The faintest hint of a smile touched her lips, then disappeared. Another silence stretched between them. Through the cabin windows, Ren could see the late afternoon sun slanting through the trees, painting everything gold. It would be dark in a few hours. Cold, too. The nights were already dipping below freezing. "When's the baby due?" he heard himself ask. "January. Early January, I think." "You think?" "I haven't seen a doctor." She said it matter-of-factly, without shame or defiance. Just a statement of reality. Ren rubbed his hand over his face. This wasn't what he'd signed up for. He'd come here to escape complications, not inherit new ones. But as he stood there in the doorway of his cabin, his refuge, his last chance at peace, looking at this woman who clearly had even less than he did, he felt something shift inside him. He thought about Kieran, about all the times he'd chosen work over family, about Corinne's tired eyes in those final years, about the slow way he'd failed everyone who'd ever depended on him. Maybe he couldn't fix those mistakes. Maybe Kieran would never look at him the way he used to, and maybe Corinne would always be the one who got away. But right now, standing in this cabin with a pregnant stranger and a dog who'd already chosen sides, Ren had a choice to make. He could be the man who'd spent years letting people down, or he could be someone different. "How long have you been alone?" he asked. 3 months, more or less. "And you've been managing, getting food, staying warm?" "Yes." Marlee's hand moved unconsciously to her belly. "I know how to take care of myself." Ren believed her. Everything about this place, the neatly stacked firewood by the hearth, the organized supplies, the general sense that someone had been not just surviving, but actually living here, spoke to competence and determination. "Okay," he said, slowly. "Here's what we're going to do. It's getting late, and I'm tired from driving. We're both going to stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. That work for you?" Marlee studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. "Yes, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ren said, but there was no harshness in it. "I still don't know what I'm doing." "That makes 2 of us," Marlee replied. And despite everything, despite the failed marriage and the lost business and the son who barely spoke to him anymore, Ren almost smiled. 3 days passed in careful orbit around each other. Ren and Marlee established an unspoken rhythm. She cooked breakfast while he brought in firewood. He made supply lists while she inventoried what was already there. They ate dinner on opposite sides of the small table and spoke only when necessary. It was a dance of politeness and distance, 2 people sharing space, but not yet sharing lives. On the 4th morning, Ren woke to the sound of hammering. He pulled on his boots and jacket and stepped outside to find Marlee on the roof. She'd dragged a ladder from somewhere behind the cabin and was nailing down loose shingles, her movements careful but confident despite the swell of her belly. The early November air was sharp with cold and her breath came out in clouds. "What are you doing?" Ren called up. She didn't stop working. "There's a leak over the northeast corner. Storm's coming in tomorrow. Needs to be fixed. You shouldn't be up there." "Probably not." She drove another nail home with practiced efficiency. "But it still needs doing." Ren climbed the ladder and took the hammer from her hand. "Get down. I'll finish it." For a moment he thought she might argue. Then she nodded and made her way carefully back to the ground. Ren spent the next hour patching the roof, and when he came down, he found fresh coffee waiting and Marlee splitting kindling with an axe that looked older than both of them. "You've done this before," he said. "My grandfather had a place in Vermont, taught me how to maintain it." She set another log on the block and split it clean. "He died when I was 16. The family sold it." It was the first real piece of information she'd offered about herself. Ren filed it away and went to help stack the wood. That afternoon, he drove into town, a 40-mile trip over rough roads to a place called Millridge that consisted of a general store, a post office, and a diner that looked like it had been there since the Depression. He bought food and medical supplies, warm clothes, and extra blankets. At the checkout counter, he noticed a bulletin board covered in flyers and announcements. Among the lost pet posters and handyman ads, there were a few missing person notices. He studied them more carefully than he wanted to admit, but none of the faces matched Marlee. None of the descriptions came close. When he returned to the cabin, he found she'd cooked dinner from ingredients she'd foraged: wild mushrooms, late-season greens, roots she'd dug from the forest floor. It was simple, but good, and they ate together as the sun set through the pines. "Thank you," Marlee said when he showed her the supplies. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yeah, I did." Ren unpacked the prenatal vitamins and set them on the table. "You're pregnant and alone." "Of course I did." She picked up the bottle and read the label, something unreadable crossing her face. "I can't pay you back. Not now. Maybe not ever." "I didn't ask you to." "Why not?" The question was quiet but direct. "Why are you helping me?" Ren sat down across from her. Outside, Ash barked at something in the woods, probably a deer or a rabbit. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I spent the last 10 years building a business," he said finally. "Working 70-hour weeks, missing my kids' baseball games, forgetting anniversaries. I told myself it was for my family, that I was providing for them. But really, I was just avoiding home because I didn't know how to be there." He looked at his hands, calloused and scarred from years of construction work. "My wife left me. My son barely speaks to me. The business failed anyway. I lost everything I thought mattered. And you know what the worst part is?" Marlee waited. "I deserved it. Every bit of it. Because when people needed me to show up, I didn't." He met her eyes. "So, maybe I'm helping you because I need to prove to myself that I can actually be there for someone. Or maybe I'm just tired of failing. Either way, you're here, you need help, and for once in my life I'm not going to walk away from that." The silence that followed felt different from the careful quiet of the past few days. Heavier, more honest. "I was a nurse," Marlee said, "before everything fell apart. Labor and delivery, mostly. I was good at it." "What happened?" She looked down at her hands. "I met someone. He seemed wonderful at first, attentive, romantic, the kind of man who remembered every little thing you said." Her voice went flat. "Then we got married, and he started remembering everything I did wrong. Every place I went, every person I talked to. He wanted to know where I was every minute, who I was with, what I was thinking." Ren felt his jaw tighten but said nothing. "It got worse after I quit my job. He said we didn't need the money, that he wanted me home. But really, he just wanted me isolated. No co-workers to notice the bruises. No friends to ask questions." She touched her belly gently. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to leave. He would have used the baby to control me forever. So I ran." "Does he know where you are?" "I don't think so. I've been careful. Paid cash for everything, stayed off social media, kept moving." She looked up at him. "But he's looking. Men like him always look. They don't let go of what they think belongs to them." "You don't belong to anyone," Ren said, firmly. "I know that. He doesn't." She stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the darkening forest. "This cabin, I found it by accident. I was hiking through the woods, trying to put distance between me and the last town, and I saw the chimney through the trees. The door was unlocked. It was empty. It felt like Providence." "How long were you planning to stay?" "As long as I could." She turned back to him. "I've been stockpiling supplies, learning the land, preparing for winter. I thought maybe I could make it through, have the baby here, figure out what comes next after that." "Alone?" Ren couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "You were going to give birth alone in the middle of nowhere? I've delivered dozens of babies. I know what to do." "That's different, and you know it." "Maybe." Her expression softened slightly. "But I didn't have another choice. I still don't. If I go to a hospital, there will be records. He'll find me. And if he finds me—" She stopped, the fear naked on her face for just a moment before she controlled it. Ren stood and walked over to her. "You're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." "Why?" The word came out almost desperate. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. This isn't your problem." "Because I've spent too many years letting people down," he said. "And I'm tired of it. You need help. I can help. It's that simple." Marlee searched his face, looking for something doubt, ulterior motives, the signs she'd learned to recognize in her ex-husband. Whatever she was looking for, she apparently didn't find it, because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Okay," she said. "Okay." That night, they sat by the fire, and Marlee taught him what to look for as her pregnancy progressed. Signs of complications, when to worry, what normal looked like versus what required intervention. She was clinical about it, using medical terminology and treating her own body like a textbook case. But Ren could see the fear underneath. She was terrified of childbirth, of being found, of the future. But she was facing it anyway, with a courage that humbled him. "If something goes wrong," she said quietly, "if he finds me, he won't. But if he does, Marlee." Ren waited until she looked at him. "He won't find you here. And if by some chance he does, he'll have to go through me first. I promise you that." She nodded slowly, and for the first time since he'd walked through that door 4 days ago, she smiled. It was small and fragile, but it was real. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the promise of the storm she'd predicted. The first snow of the season would arrive by morning. Winter was coming to the northern plains, and with it, the long months of isolation that would either break them or forge them into something stronger. Ren watched the firelight play across Marlee's face and realized his life had changed the moment he'd turned that rusty key. He'd come here to escape, to hide from his failures and start over in solitude. Instead, he'd found purpose, and maybe, if he didn't mess it up this time, redemption. The first snow came that night, just as Marlee had predicted. Ren woke to a world transformed, 6 inches of white covering everything, the trees heavy with it, the silence profound in the way only fresh snow can create. He stood on the porch with his coffee, watching ash bound through the drifts like a puppy, and felt something close to peace. Inside, Marlee was already awake, kneading dough at the makeshift counter. She'd found flour and yeast in the supplies he'd brought from town, and was making bread from scratch. The cabin smelled like warmth and comfort, like something his grandmother's house had smelled like when he was young. "Morning," she said, without turning around. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks." He refilled his cup and sat at the table watching her work. Her movements were efficient, practiced. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to. Besides, we'll need bread for the next few weeks. Store-bought won't keep as well." Over the following days, they fell into a routine that felt less like strangers cohabiting and more like partners building something together. Ren spent his mornings working on the cabin, reinforcing the porch, replacing rotted floorboards, installing better insulation in the walls. Marlee organized their supplies, created inventory lists, and planned meals that would stretch their resources through the winter months. In the afternoons, they worked together. Ren split firewood, while Marlee stacked it under the covered section of the porch. She showed him which plants in the forest were edible, which could be used for medicine. He taught her how to use the hunting rifle he'd brought from his old life, just in case. "I don't like guns," she said, holding it awkwardly. "You don't have to like it. You just have to know how to use it." He adjusted her stance, kept his hands professional and distant. "Out here, it's a tool. Like an axe or a saw." She learned quickly, the way she seemed to learn everything with focus and determination that suggested she'd spent her life proving she could handle whatever came her way. Evenings were reserved for sitting by the fire. Sometimes they talked, sharing careful pieces of their histories. Sometimes they simply existed in companionable silence. Marlee knitting baby clothes from yarn she'd salvaged from somewhere. Ren carving a wooden spoon from a piece of birch he'd found in the woods. "Why a spoon?" she asked one night. He turned the piece in his hands, studying the grain. "My dad used to make them. Said every home needed something made by hand, something that would last. After he died, I kept the ones he'd made. They're probably in a storage unit somewhere now, along with everything else I couldn't take with me. Do you miss him?" "Every day." Ren ran his thumb along the spoon's curve. "He was a good man, steady, the kind of father who showed up for everything. I always meant to be like him, but somewhere along the way I lost track of what that meant." Marlee set down her knitting. "You're showing up now. For you. Not for my own kid. Maybe this is practice." She said it gently, without judgment. "Maybe you're learning how to do it right, so when Kieran's ready to let you back in, you'll know how." The thought settled in his chest. Uncomfortable, and hopeful at the same time. A week after the first snow, Ren made another trip to town. The roads were treacherous, and the drive took twice as long. In Millridge, he bought more supplies and stood in line at the post office to mail a letter to Kieran, something he'd been doing monthly since the divorce, even though his son rarely wrote back. At the diner, he ordered lunch and listened to the conversations around him. Two ranchers discussing cattle prices, a woman complaining about the school board, a young couple planning their wedding. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that just 40 miles away, a man and a pregnant woman were building something fragile and necessary out of desperation and hope. He called Kieran from the payphone outside the general store. The boy answered on the fourth ring. "Hey, Dad. Hey, son. How are you?" "Fine. School's okay. Mum's boyfriend is teaching me to change the oil in his truck." Ren swallowed the jealousy that rose in his throat. "That's good. Important to know how to do that." "Yeah." A pause. "You still in that cabin?" "Yeah." "Is it nice?" Ren looked out at the grey November sky, the snow-covered streets of this town that wasn't his home, but was the closest thing to civilization he had. "It's quiet, peaceful. I think you'd like it. Maybe I could visit sometime." "I'd like that." Ren's voice came out rougher than he intended. "I'd really like that, Kieran." "Okay, well, I gotta go. Mum's calling me for dinner." "Sure. I love you, son." "Love you too, Dad." The line went dead. Ren stood there with the receiver in his hand, that brief conversation playing over in his mind. Kieran had said, maybe wasn't no, maybe was possibility. When he returned to the cabin, he found Marlee sitting in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun set through the pines. She looked peaceful in a way he hadn't seen before, her hand resting on her belly, a small smile on her face. "Baby's kicking," she said when he approached. "Want to feel?" Ren hesitated. It seemed too intimate, too presumptuous, but she held out her hand, and he found himself kneeling beside her, letting her guide his palm to the right spot. There, a flutter, then a solid push against his hand. A tiny human making its presence known. "Wow," he breathed. "I know." Marlee kept her hand over his. "Makes it real, doesn't it?" "Yeah." He looked up at her. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." She said it easily, like fear was just another fact to acknowledge, but also excited. "Does that make sense?" "It does." They stayed like that as the time. Light faded, his hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. When Ash came over and pushed his nose between them, they both laughed, and the moment broke naturally. That night, Ren worked on the spoon by firelight while Marlee read from a battered paperback she'd found in the cabin. The wind howled outside, but inside it was warm and safe. He finished the spoon's handle, sanded it smooth, and rubbed it with oil until the wood gleamed. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "For the kitchen." Marlee examined it, running her fingers over the curves he'd carved. "It's beautiful." "Thank you. Every home needs something made by hand," he said, echoing his father's words. She met his eyes. "Is that what this is? A home?" Ren thought about the question, about the divorce papers still in his truck's glove compartment, about his son who was learning to change oil with another man, about this woman who'd been hiding in an abandoned cabin, and how their lives had collided in this unexpected way. "Yeah," he said finally, "I think maybe it is." Marlee smiled, and it was fuller than that first fragile one, more genuine. "Good, because I was starting to feel that way too, and I didn't want to be the only one." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Winter was settling in for real now, and they were settling in with it, two broken people finding their way towards something whole, one careful day at a time. Ren picked up another piece of wood and began carving. He didn't know what he was making yet, but his hands seemed to know. They moved with purpose and patience, shaping something useful from raw material, and for the first time in years he felt like he was building instead of breaking, like maybe he was becoming the man his father had been. the man he'd always meant to be. The contractions hit on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into their arrangement. Ren was outside splitting wood when he heard Marlee cry out. He dropped the axe and ran inside to find her doubled over at the table, one hand braced against the wood, the other pressed to her belly. "What's wrong?" His heart hammered in his chest. "Contraction." She breathed through it, counting silently. When it passed, she straightened slowly. "It's okay. Braxton Hicks, probably. False labor? Probably. Almost certainly." But her face was pale, and when she moved to sit down, he saw her hands trembling. Over the next hour, 3 more came. Each time, Ren felt his own panic rising, while Marlee remained outwardly calm, timing them, assessing their strength. Finally, she looked up at him. "They're irregular. Not real labor. But it's a reminder that this baby's coming, whether we're ready or not." "We're not ready." The words came out more forcefully than he intended. "Marlee, we're 40 miles from the nearest hospital. If something goes wrong, then we handle it." She stood and walked to the shelf where she'd organized medical supplies. "Come here. We need to go over this." Into the evening, Marlee taught him everything she could about childbirth. She used clinical language at first: dilation, effacement, stages of labor, but when she saw his confusion, she simplified it. Showed him diagrams from an old medical textbook she'd found in the cabin's attic, walked him through scenarios, step by step. "If the baby's in distress, you'll need to help me change positions. Here, like this." She demonstrated, and he found himself physically supporting her, his hands on her shoulders, her back, learning the mechanics of how to help without getting in the way. "What if it's breech?" he asked. "Then it gets complicated, but I'll talk you through it." She met his eyes. "Ren, I've delivered over 200 babies. I know what I'm doing. I just need you to stay calm and follow my instructions." "What if I can't?" The fear in his voice surprised him. "What if I freeze up or do something wrong?" Marlee took his hand. "You won't. You're the kind of man who shows up when it matters. I can see that about you." Her confidence steadied him, but as they continued the lesson, learning how to check for crowning, how to support the baby's head, how to clear airways, the weight of responsibility settled heavy on his shoulders. This wasn't building a deck or wiring an outlet. This was life and death, and his hands would be the only ones available when the moment came. That night, neither of them slept well. Ren lay awake, listening to every sound from Marlee's side of the cabin, alert for any sign of distress. In the morning, she looked as tired as he felt. "I'm sorry," she said over coffee. "I know yesterday scared you. It needed to happen. We needed to prepare." He wrapped his hands around his mug. "Tell me about when Kieran was born." Marlee looked surprised by the question, but she settled back in her chair, inviting the story. "Corinne's labor lasted 14 hours, Ren said. "I thought I was prepared. We'd taken the classes, read the books. But when it actually started, I felt useless. All I could do was hold her hand and tell her she was doing great while she squeezed my fingers hard enough to leave bruises." He smiled at the memory. "When Kieran finally arrived, the nurse put him in my arms, and I just stood there staring at him. This perfect little person. I made promises to him right then, that I'd always be there, that I'd be the kind of father he deserved." "What happened?" Marlee asked, gently. "Life happened. Work happened. I let the promises slip away, one day at a time, until there was nothing left of them." He looked at her. "But yesterday, when you were teaching me all that, I kept thinking about those promises. How maybe I'm getting a second chance to keep them, even if it's not with my own kid. This baby's lucky to have you. I don't know about that, but I'm going to try. That's all I can promise." They spent the next few days in preparation mode. Marlee showed him how to sterilize equipment using boiling water. They set up a delivery area near the fireplace where it would be warmest. Ren built a simple cradle from scrap lumber, measuring twice and cutting once, taking his time to get it right. Marlee watched him work one afternoon, her knitting forgotten in her lap. "You're good at that. Building things. It's what I did. Before everything fell apart." He sanded a rough edge smooth. "Had a construction company, small operation, just me and a few guys, but we did good work. People trusted us." "What happened?" "Economy tanked. Projects dried up. I took out loans to keep us going, thinking it would turn around." He set down the sandpaper. "It didn't. Lost the business, the house, everything. My crew guys who'd worked for me for years, I had to let them all go. Some of them had families depending on those paychecks. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I was the one who made the decisions, took the risks." He picked up the cradle, examining his work. "Maybe I was just meant to fail at everything that mattered." "You're not failing now." Marlee's voice was firm. "You're building something that will keep a baby safe. That matters." He carried the cradle over and set it beside her chair. It was simple but sturdy, with smooth rails and a gentle curve to the base that would allow it to rock. Marlee ran her hand along the wood, and her eyes went bright with tears. She blinked away quickly. "It's perfect," she whispered. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Marlee grew quiet. Ren had learned to recognize her moods by now, when she wanted to talk and when she needed silence. This was neither. This was the quiet of someone working up courage. "His name is Dallin," she said finally, "the baby's father." Ren didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. "Dallin Vries. He's a lawyer in Boston. Successful, respected, active in his church. Everyone thinks he's wonderful." Her hands twisted in her lap. "The first time he hit me, he cried afterward. Said he didn't know what came over him. Blamed stress from work, promised it would never happen again. But it did. It always does, doesn't it?" She looked at him. "I left twice before. Both times he found me, convinced me to come back, said he'd change. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because admitting I'd married a monster was harder than pretending the monster was really a man. You got out. That's what matters. Did I?" Marlee touched her belly. "Or did I just take the prison with me? Because every day I'm afraid he'll find me. Every car I hear on that distant road, every stranger I imagine in the woods, I think it's him, coming to take me back." Ren moved to kneel in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. "Listen to me. You're not going back. You're not a prisoner. You're a woman who was brave enough to save herself and her baby. And I promise you, Marlee, as long as I'm breathing, he's not going to hurt you again." She searched his face, looking for doubt or false bravado. Finding neither, she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up, for staying, for all of it. You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. Because you didn't have to care, but you chose to anyway. That means something." Outside, Ash barked at the night. The fire crackled. Snow began to fall again, soft and steady, covering the world in white. Inside the cabin, two people who'd been strangers weeks ago sat together in the warmth, building trust, one honest moment at a time. And in the corner, the cradle waited empty now, but not for long. The text message arrived on a Wednesday in mid-November, shattering their carefully built peace. Ren had driven into Millridge for supplies, leaving early to beat an approaching storm. The town was quiet, the diner nearly empty, the streets already showing patches of ice. He bought what they needed: flour, coffee, lamp oil, more medical supplies, and was loading the truck when he overheard two men talking outside. "The hardware store. They're saying he was last seen heading north," one of them said. "Some kind of manhunt in Montana." "What'd he do?" "Beat his girlfriend half to death. She's in intensive care. They got a warrant out for him now. Assault, attempted murder. Guy's a real piece of work." Ren's hands stilled on the bag he was holding. "Excuse me," he called over. "You said Montana?" The man nodded. "Yeah, just over the border. They think he might be heading into the Dakotas or Wyoming. State police are looking for him." "What's his name?" Didn't catch it. Some domestic situation that went bad. You know how it is. Happens more than people like to admit. Ren finished loading the truck, his mind racing. Montana wasn't far, a few 100 miles at most. And there were plenty of men who hurt women, plenty of manhunts that had nothing to do with Marlee. But the uneasiness that had settled in his gut wouldn't let go. He made the drive back faster than he should have. The truck, fishtailing on icy patches. When he pulled up to the cabin, he found Marlee sitting on the porch steps, despite the cold, her face pale, her phone clutched in her hand. What happened? He was out of the truck before the engine stopped. She held up the phone without speaking. On the screen, a single text message. "I know you're in the north. I'm coming." Ren felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. "When did you get this?" "An hour ago." Her voice shook. "I thought I was careful. I haven't used this phone in weeks, haven't turned it on. But he must have been tracking it somehow, waiting for me to make a mistake. Have you responded?" "No. I turned it off right away." She looked up at him. "But it doesn't matter now. He knows the general area. It's only a matter of time before he narrows it down." Ren sat beside her on the steps. "Tell me everything. His full name, what he looks like, what he drives, everything you know." "Over the next hour," Marlee told him. Dallin Vries was 38, tall and fit. With dark hair he kept short, and a smile that had charmed her into ignoring every warning sign. He drove a black Audi, or at least he had when she'd left. He was intelligent, methodical, and absolutely relentless when he wanted something. "He'll find me," she said. "Maybe not today or tomorrow, but he'll find me. That's what he does. He always finds me. Not this time." Ren stood and pulled her gently to her feet. "Come on. Let's get you inside where it's warm." The cabin suddenly felt different, less like a refuge and more like a position that needed defending. Ren looked at it with new eyes, assessing sightlines and approaches, weak points and strengths. The isolation that had seemed like a blessing now felt like a vulnerability. No neighbors to call for help. No police station within easy reach. Just 40 acres of forest and the two of them. That night, while Marlee tried to sleep, Ren sat at the table with paper and pencil, drawing rough maps of the pass. Property. The cabin sat in a small clearing with forest on 3 sides, and the access road approaching from the east. There were good sightlines from the porch and windows. The trees would make it hard for someone to approach unseen in daylight, but at night, in the dark, anyone could get close. He thought about the hunting rifle in the corner, about the axe by the woodpile, about the fact that he was 45 years old and hadn't been in a real fight since high school. But he also thought about Marlee's face when she'd shown him that text message. The fear, yes, but also the resignation. The look of someone who'd been caught before and expected to be caught again. He wouldn't let that happen. Over the next few days, Ren worked on fortifying their position. He reinforced the cabin doors with additional brackets and locks, cleared brush from around the perimeter to improve visibility, set up a simple alarm system using fishing line and tin cans at the main approaches to the property. It was crude, but effective. Anyone trying to sneak up at night would make noise. Marlee watched him work with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "You shouldn't have to do this," she said one afternoon. "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is." Ren hammered another nail into the doorframe. "You're here. That makes it my fight. But why? I still don't understand why you're doing all this for me." He set down the hammer and turned to face her. "You want the honest answer? Because I spent years failing the people I was supposed to protect. I couldn't keep my marriage together. I couldn't save my business. I couldn't be the father my son needed. But this," he gestured at the cabin, at her, at everything they'd built. "This I can do. I can keep you safe. I can be here when it matters. And maybe that won't fix all my other failures, but at least it's something. You're not a failure, Ren. Tell that to my ex-wife. Or my kid, who barely talks to me." He picked up the hammer again. "No, I failed at the things that should have mattered most. But I'm not going to fail at this. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Marlee said quietly, "My father was in the military. He served 3 tours overseas. When he came back, he wasn't the same person my mother had married. He was angry all the time, couldn't hold a job, drank too much." She paused. "One night, he hit her. Just once. The next morning, he packed a bag and left. We never saw him again. I'm sorry. I used to think he left because he was weak, because he couldn't control himself and didn't want to hurt us again." She looked at Ren. "But now I think maybe he left because he thought it was the only way to protect us from himself. That's a hard thing to carry." "It is. And when I met Dalin, I told myself I'd never let anyone treat me the way my father treated my mother. I'd see the signs. I'd leave at the first hint of violence." She laughed bitterly. "But it doesn't work that way, does it? It's not one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones, little compromises, tiny warnings you tell yourself aren't really warnings. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already caught." Ren reached over and took her hand. "You got out. That's more than a lot of people manage. I ran. There's a difference." "No, there isn't. Running away from danger is just another word for survival. And survival takes courage." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters they'd reinforced. Ash lifted his head from where he lay by the fire, ears pricked, then settled back down. False alarm. But Ren knew it wouldn't always be false. Eventually, the threat would become real. Dalin would come, or someone else would, and when that happened, everything they'd built here would be tested. He looked at Marlee, 7 months pregnant and braver than she knew, and made a silent promise. Whatever came through that door would have to go through him first. And he wasn't going to move. The compass had belonged to Ren's father. He found it in a box of his belongings he'd shoved in the truck bed before leaving his old life behind, things too important to sell, but too painful to look at. The brass was tarnished, the glass face scratched, but the needle still pointed true north. His father had carried it through Korea, brought it home and kept it on his desk for 40 years. When Ren was a boy, his father would let him hold it, would explain how a man needed to know which direction he was heading, even when the path got difficult. "A compass doesn't make the journey easier," his father had said. "It just reminds you where you meant to go." Ren sat on the porch in the weak December sunlight, turning the compass over in his hands. Marlee was inside, resting. The baby had been active all morning, keeping her awake, making her back ache. He'd noticed she moved more slowly now, one hand always supporting her belly, her breath coming shorter with even simple tasks. Time was running out. Not just the threat of Dalin finding them, but the more immediate reality that Marlee was going to give birth in a matter of weeks, possibly in the middle of winter. Miles from any medical help. The weight of that responsibility pressed on him constantly now. "What are you thinking about?" Marlee's voice came from the doorway. She'd wrapped herself in the quilt from her bed, her hair loose around her shoulders. "My dad," Ren held up the compass. "He was in the war, Korea. Didn't talk much about what he saw there, but sometimes at night I'd hear him pacing, couldn't sleep. My mother would sit with him until dawn." Marlee lowered herself carefully onto the step beside him. "What was he like?" "Steady. That's the word that always comes to mind. No matter what happened, lost jobs, money troubles, my sister getting sick, he just handled it, never panicked, never ran, just stood his ground and dealt with whatever came." Ren rubbed his thumb over the compass face. "I always wanted to be like him, but somewhere along the way I forgot how. You're being like him now. Am I? Or am I just trying to make up for all the times I wasn't? Does it matter?" Marlee pulled the quilt tighter around herself. "Either way, you're here. You're standing your ground." They sat in silence for a while, watching Ash chase something through the snow. The dog was happy here, Ren had noticed. Happier than he'd been in the city, cooped up in that garage apartment. Maybe dogs understood what people often forgot, that peace wasn't about having everything, but about having what mattered. "Tell me more about Dalin," Ren said. "Not what he did to you, who he is, how he thinks." Marlee was quiet for a long moment. "He's smart. Graduated top of his law school. He knows how to read people, how to find their weaknesses and use them. That's what makes him dangerous. He doesn't just overpower you physically. He gets inside your head first. How did he track you before? Credit cards at first. Then, when I got smarter about that, he used my phone. Installed tracking software I didn't know about. When I ditched that phone and got a new one, he convinced my sister to give him my new number. Told her I was having a mental breakdown and he was worried about me." She laughed bitterly. She believed him. Everyone always believes him. What about friends? Other family? My mother died when I was 20. Cancer. My father, I told you about him. He's been gone since I was 12. My sister lives in California, and we haven't spoken in 2 years. No close friends. Dalin made sure of that." She looked at Ren. "That's how men like him operate. They isolate you first, then they own you. He doesn't own you. I know that now, but for 3 years I believed he did." Ren studied the compass in his hand. North. His father always said you needed to know which direction was north, no matter how lost you got. It was the constant. The truth that didn't change even when everything else did. "If he comes," Ren said carefully, "what do you want me to do?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you want me to call the police? Try to resolve it peacefully? Or he met her eyes? Or do you want me to make sure he can never hurt you again?" Marlee's breath caught. "Ren, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering." He kept his voice level, factual. "I need to know what you want so I can plan accordingly. Because if he shows up here, I'm not letting him take you. That's already decided. But how I stop him, that's up to you." She wrapped her arms around herself, or tried to. The baby made it difficult now. "I don't want anyone to get hurt. Someone's going to get hurt. That's the reality we're facing. The question is who? Not you." Her voice was fierce suddenly. "I won't have you hurt because of me. Then tell me what you want me to do." Marlee looked out at the forest, at the endless white stretching in every direction. "I want to be free. Really free. Not looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Not afraid every time someone knocks on a door or calls my name." She turned back to him. "I want my daughter to grow up without fear hanging over her. Without a father who would use her as a weapon against me." "Okay." Ren tucked the compass into his pocket. "Then that's what we'll make happen." That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in his sleeping bag, listening to the cabin settle around him, and thought about violence. He'd never been a violent man, had gotten into exactly 3 fights in his entire life, once in 8th grade, once in high school, once in a bar when he was 22. He'd won the first 2 and lost the third. The experience had taught him that fighting was messy and painful and rarely solved anything. But he also knew that sometimes violence was the only language certain people understood. His father had known that, had carried that knowledge home from Korea in ways that woke him pacing at night. Near midnight, Marlee stirred. Ren heard her get up, heard her moving carefully in the dark. Then her voice soft. "Ren? You awake?" "Yeah. Can't sleep either." "No." She came and sat on the floor beside his sleeping bag, her back against the wall. In the dim glow of the banked fire, her face was all shadows and angles. "I'm scared," she said. "Not just of Dalin, of what this is turning into, of what I'm asking you to become. You're not asking me to become anything. I'm choosing. But why? You keep saying you're choosing, but I don't understand why. You could have turned me away that first day, could have called the police, could have made this someone else's problem." Her voice broke slightly. "Why are you willing to fight for me?" Ren sat up, still in his sleeping bag. "Because for the first time in 10 years, I'm doing something that matters. Not for money, Not for pride, not because someone's expecting it, but because it's right. He looked at her. And because you deserve someone who'll stand their ground when it counts. Marlee reached out in the darkness and found his hand. They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding on while the fire burned low and the night pressed close around them. Outside, the wind carried the promise of more snow. Winter was deepening, closing them in, making the cabins smaller and the world larger. Whatever was coming would come soon. They both felt it. But for now, they had this moment, this quiet, this peace. And Ren intended to fight for every moment more they could get. The woman arrived on a clear December morning when the sun made the snow blindingly bright. Ren spotted the vehicle first, a silver SUV making its way slowly up the access road. He'd been outside checking the perimeter when the glint of sun on metal caught his eye. Marlee. He kept his voice calm but firm. We have company. She appeared in the doorway, her hand already moving to her belly in that protective gesture he'd come to recognize. Is it? I don't know. Get inside, away from the windows. Ren retrieved the rifle from inside and positioned himself on the porch where he had a clear view of the approaching vehicle. Ash stood beside him, alert but not growling. The dog's instincts were usually good about threats. The SUV stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was in her 40s, dressed in a practical winter coat and boots, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She raised both hands, palms out, in a gesture of peace. "Mr. Doyle," she called. "My name is Geneva Sutherland. I'm looking for Marlee Vries. I'm not here to cause trouble." Ren didn't lower the rifle. "Who sent you?" "No one sent me. I'm a private investigator." She reached slowly into her coat pocket and pulled out a leather wallet, letting it fall open to show credentials. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "About what?" "About Dalin Vries." The name hung in the cold air. "And about why Marlee doesn't need to be afraid anymore." Ren glanced back at the cabin. Marlee had appeared at the window despite his instructions, her face pale but determined. She gave him a small nod. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Ren said. "Come forward slowly." Geneva Sutherland approached with careful, deliberate steps. When she reached the porch, Ren could see she was unarmed, her expression professional but not unkind. Up close, he noticed she had tired eyes and the weathered look of someone who'd seen more than her share of ugly situations. "Thank you for hearing me out," she said. "Is Marlee inside?" The cabin door opened. Marlee stood in the threshold, one hand on the doorframe for support. "I don't know you." "No, you don't. But I know about you. About what Dalin did to you. About why you ran." Geneva pulled an envelope from her other pocket. "I have something you need to see. If this is some trick to get me to come back, Dalin Vries is dead." Geneva said it simply, without drama. "He died 3 weeks ago. Car accident on Highway 90 near the Montana border. He was driving too fast in icy conditions, lost control, hit a bridge abutment, died on impact." The words seemed to echo in the silence that followed. Marlee's face went blank with shock. Ren lowered the rifle slightly but didn't set it down. "You're lying," Marlee whispered. Geneva held out the envelope. "Death certificate, police report, newspaper articles. It's all here. I'm sorry to deliver the news this way, but I figured you'd want proof." Ren took the envelope and opened it. Inside were official documents, photocopied news articles with photos. He scanned them quickly, then showed them to Marlee. Her hands shook as she read. "I don't understand," she said. "If he's dead, why are you here?" "Because I was hired to find you. Not by Dalin, he hired me 6 weeks before he died, but I lost your trail in Nebraska. After he died, someone else contacted me, someone who wants to help you." "Who?" Geneva's expression softened. "Your family. Specifically, your uncle on your mother's side, Harrison Sutherland. He's my cousin, which is how he knew to hire me. Marlee shook her head. I don't have family. My mother's dead. My father's gone. My sister wants nothing to do with me. Your sister was wrong about you. She knows that now. And your uncle never stopped looking for you, even after you married Dallin. Especially after. Geneva took a breath. Your family isn't perfect, Marlee. They made mistakes. They should have supported you when you married Dallin, even if they didn't approve. They shouldn't have cut you off. But they want to make that right now. Now that I'm pregnant and alone and Dallin's conveniently dead, now that they know the truth about what he did to you. Your uncle hired a private investigator after Dallin died, different one, before me. That investigator found hospital records, police reports you filed and then withdrew, statements from neighbors, evidence of everything Dallin put you through. Geneva's voice was gentle now. They know, Marlee. They believe you, and they want you to come home. Ren watched Marlee's face cycle through emotions, shock, disbelief, anger, something that might have been hope. She looked at him, and he saw the question in her eyes. What do they want? He asked Geneva. To offer support, financial help, a safe place for Marlee and the baby, medical care. Geneva pulled out a business card. Your uncle lives in Vermont. He owns the family estate, the one your grandfather left. He wants you to come there. Have the baby in a proper hospital. Let them help you start over. They have money. It wasn't a question from Marlee. Yes, your grandfather was very successful. When he died, he left everything to your uncle with instructions that it be held in trust for you if you ever needed it. Geneva paused. You're wealthy, Marlee. Or you could be, if you accept your family's help. The revelation landed like a stone in still water. Ren felt something shift in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite name. Betrayal wasn't right, neither was anger. Maybe it was just the sudden understanding that everything he'd thought about their situation had been incomplete. You never mentioned your family had money, he said quietly. Marlee turned to him. I didn't think it mattered. They disowned me. The money might as well not exist if they won't. She stopped, looking back at Geneva. What changed? Why now? Your uncle never stopped trying to reach you, but Dallin blocked every attempt, intercepted letters, screened your calls, made sure you believed no one cared. Geneva's expression was sympathetic. When they found out he was dead, they intensified the search. They've been looking for you for 3 weeks. I finally traced you through the property sale. She glanced at Ren. The cabin deed is public record. Ren set the rifle down, his mind racing. Dallin was dead. Marlee had family willing to help. Money, resources, everything she needed to start over properly. And he was just a broke ex-contractor living in a rundown cabin, playing protector in a drama that apparently no longer needed one. I need time to think, Marlee said. It's a lot. Of course. Geneva set her card on the porch railing. My number's on there, your uncle's number too. Call whenever you're ready. There's no pressure. But Marlee, you should know the baby's due soon. A hospital would be safer than... She glanced around at the remote cabin. Than this. After Geneva left, Ren and Marlee stood in silence, watching the SUV disappear down the access road. When the sound of the engine finally faded, Marlee turned to him. Say something, she said. What do you want me to say? I don't know. That you're angry I didn't tell you about my family? That this changes things? Ren picked up his rifle and leaned it against the wall. Does it? Change things? I don't know. Does it? He looked at her. Really looked. 7 months pregnant, wearing his old flannel shirt because hers didn't fit anymore, standing in the doorway of a cabin that had somehow become home for both of them. Wealthy or not, family or not, she was still the same person who'd been hiding here when he arrived, still the same woman who'd taught him how to split wood properly and how to find north when you felt lost. You could leave, he said, have everything you need, safety, medical care, money, a real future. I know. So why do you look like you're being asked to walk into a prison? Marlee's eyes filled with tears. Because this place, this cabin, it's the first time I've felt like myself in years. Like a person, not a possession or a disappointment. And I'm terrified that if I leave, I'll lose that. Ren understood, more than she knew. But he also understood that what he wanted and what was best for her might be two different things. And for once in his life, he was going to choose what was best for someone else, even if it meant letting her go. The week following Geneva Sutherland's visit passed in a fog of unspoken tension. Marlee didn't call the number on the card. She didn't talk about Vermont, or her uncle, or the money waiting for her. Instead, she moved through the cabin like a ghost, going through the motions of their daily routine, while clearly somewhere else entirely. Ren gave her space. He chopped wood, repaired a section of fence he'd been meaning to get to, made a supply run to Millridge. When he returned, he found her standing at the window, the business card in her hand. "I called my uncle," she said without turning around. "We talked for 2 hours. Ren set down the supplies. And," he apologized, "for not fighting harder to stay in my life when I married Dallin. For believing Dallin when he said I didn't want contact with the family. For," her voice broke, "for everything. What did you tell him? That I needed time. That I couldn't make any decisions right now." She finally turned to face him. "He wants me to come for Christmas. Says my sister will be there, that they want to meet the baby. That's good. Family matters." "Does it?" The question came out sharp. "Where were they when I needed them? When Dallin was—" She stopped, pressed her hand to her belly. "I'm sorry. I'm just angry. At everyone. At myself most of all. For what? For not telling you about them. For letting you think I was just some homeless pregnant woman with nowhere to go. For," she gestured helplessly at the cabin, "for letting you build all this when I could have just called my uncle months ago and had everything I needed." Ren crossed the room and sat at the table. "You want to know what I think? I'm not sure. I think you didn't call your uncle for the same reason you didn't go to the police or check into a shelter. Because you've learned the hard way that institutions and family and official channels don't always protect you. Sometimes they're part of the trap." He met her eyes. "You survived by trusting yourself, your instincts, and those instincts brought you here. To an abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere. To a place where you could breathe, where you could be yourself without someone watching every move. That's not nothing, Marlee." She sat down across from him. "But it's not sustainable either. The baby's coming in 6 weeks, maybe less. And no matter how much we've prepared, this cabin isn't a hospital. If something goes wrong, I know. So what do I do?" Ren reached across the table but stopped short of taking her hand. "You do what's best for you and the baby. If that means going to Vermont, having the baby in a hospital with your family around you, then that's what you do. And I'll be happy for you. Will you?" The question hung between them. Ren thought about honesty, about all the ways he'd failed by hiding truth behind good intentions. "No," he admitted. "I'll be terrified that you're making a mistake. That your family will try to control you the way Dallin did, just with better manners and more money. That you'll disappear into that world and forget this place ever mattered." He paused. "But that's my fear. Not your responsibility." Marlee was quiet for a long moment. "And if I stay, then we do this together. We have the baby here, we figure out what comes after, and we build whatever kind of life makes sense." He finally took her hand. "But you need to choose for the right reasons. Not because you're afraid of your family, or because you think you owe me something. You don't owe me anything, Marlee. You never did." That evening, Ren drove into town and called Kieran from the payphone. The boy answered on the second ring. "Dad? Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just wanted to hear your voice." Ren watched the sun set over Millridge's main street. "How's school?" "Good. I got an A on my history paper. The one about the Korean War." "That's great, son. Your grandfather would be proud. I wrote about him, actually. Use some of the stories you told me when I was younger, about how he never talked about the war, but sometimes you'd catch him looking at his compass. A pause. I didn't know if that was okay. Using family stories like that. Ren's throat tightened. It's more than okay. It's perfect. Mum said I could visit you at Christmas. If you want. I want that more than anything. Ren meant it. But things are complicated right now. I might not be in a good position to have you visit. Because of the pregnant lady? Ren nearly dropped the phone. How do you... Mum saw the prenatal vitamins on your credit card statement. She's not mad or anything. Just curious. I'm curious too. Kieran's voice was cautious. Is she your girlfriend? No. It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain things to kids. Despite everything, Ren smiled. You're right. Okay, here's the truth. Her name is Marlee. She needed help, and I was able to give it. Now she has to decide what's best for her and her baby. That might mean leaving. It might mean I end up alone in this cabin again. Would that be bad? Yeah, son. It would. Then tell her to stay. It's not that simple. Why not? If you want her to stay and she wants to stay, what else matters? Out of the mouths of 17-year-olds. Life's more complicated than that. Or maybe adults make it more complicated than it needs to be. Kieran sounded so much older suddenly. You taught me that sometimes you just have to show up and do the work. That's what you're doing, right? Showing up for her? Trying to. Then keep trying. And Dad, maybe this time, don't quit before it gets good. After he hung up, Ren sat in the truck for a long time, those words echoing in his head. Don't quit before it gets good. How many times had he done exactly that, given up on his marriage when it got hard, let his relationship with Kieran drift when the boy needed him most, sold everything and run to this cabin instead of fighting to rebuild. When he got back, he found Marlee decorating. She'd cut pine branches and arranged them on the mantel, made a wreath from twigs and hollyberries she'd found in the forest, set candles in the windows. What's all this? He asked. Christmas is in 9 days. I thought we should acknowledge it. She stepped back to examine her work. When I was little, my mother used to make the house beautiful for Christmas. Even after my father left, even when money was tight, she'd find a way to make it special. Ren thought about the cradle he'd built, sitting empty in the corner, about the hand-carved spoon Marlee used every day, about all the small things they'd created together in this place. I have something for you, he said. I was going to wait until Christmas, but... He went to his belongings and pulled out a small box. Inside was a photograph he'd taken with a disposable camera he'd bought in town. The turned cabin at sunset, smoke rising from the chimney, snow covering everything in gold and white. Marlee took it with trembling hands. When did you take this? Last week. I wanted you to have something to remember this place by. In case... He stopped. In case you decide to leave. She looked at the photo for a long time, then up at him. And if I stay? Then it's just a picture of home. That night, her water broke. They were sitting by the fire, Marlee knitting and Ren reading, when she gasped and looked down. The dark stain spread across her dress, and her eyes went wide with fear and something else, determination. It's time, she said. Ren felt his heart kick into overdrive, but his hands were steady as he helped her to the area they'd prepared. Okay, we can do this. We've trained for this. Ren, she gripped his arm. I'm scared, I know, so am I, but we're going to do it anyway. Outside, the first snow of a new storm began to fall. The contractions started mild but grew, steadily stronger. Ren timed them the way Marlee had taught him, 7 minutes apart, then 6, then 5. Each one made her grip the edge of the blanket they'd laid out, her breathing deliberate and controlled. You're doing great, he said, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. I haven't done anything yet. But she managed a weak smile. Wait until transition. Then you'll see what great looks like. He'd set up everything according to her instructions: clean towels, boiled water cooling in pots, sterilized scissors and clamps. The medical textbook lay open on the table, though he'd memorized the key passages weeks ago. Still, having it there felt like insurance. Hours passed. Ren kept the fire going, kept water boiling, kept track of time. Marlee walked when she could, leaning on him during contractions. When walking became too difficult, she settled into the nest of blankets they'd prepared, and he knelt beside her. "Tell me something," she said between contractions. "Distract me." "Like what?" "Anything. A good memory. Something that makes you happy." Ren thought for a moment. "When Kieran was 3, I took him to see his first snowfall. Real snow, not just flurries. We went outside, and I showed him how to catch snowflakes on his tongue. He laughed so hard he fell over, and then he just lay there in the snow making angels and giggling. The memory made him smile. Corinne took a picture. I kept it in my wallet for years. Do you still have it?" "No. I left it in the house when I moved out. Seemed like it belonged to a different life." "That's sad." "Maybe. But I'm making new memories now. Better ones, I think." Another contraction hit, harder this time. Marlee breathed through it, counting under her breath. When it passed, she looked exhausted. "How far apart now?" she asked. 3 minutes. "Getting close then?" She shifted position, trying to get comfortable. "Ren, if something goes wrong." "Nothing's going wrong. But if it does, you save the baby. You understand? Whatever choice you have to make, you choose the baby. I'm not choosing between you. We're both getting through this. Promise me." He looked at her, at this woman who'd been a stranger 2 months ago, and now felt like the most important person in his world, and made a promise he prayed he wouldn't have to keep. "I promise." Midnight came and went. The contractions grew closer, more intense. Marlee's composure began to crack around the edges. She cried out during the worst ones, gripping Ren's hand hard enough to leave marks. "I can't do this," she gasped. "It's too much. I can't." "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know." He brushed hair from her sweaty face. "And you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Around 2 in the morning, she told him to check. His hands shook as he did, but his voice stayed calm. "You're at 8 centimeters. Almost there." Almost isn't enough. But she bore down through. The next contraction anyway, her strength returning from some reserve he couldn't fathom. At 3:15, everything changed. Marlee's face went pale, her body rigid. "Something's wrong. The baby, the position isn't right. I can feel it." Ren's training kicked in. He checked again, and his stomach dropped. The baby was presenting wrong, not quite breech, but not ideal either. "What do I do? Help me change positions, hands and knees. Might give the baby room to turn." They worked together, Ren supporting her weight while she repositioned. The next contraction came hard and brutal. Marlee screamed a raw, primal sound that echoed through the cabin and seemed to shake the walls. "I need to push," she panted. "I need to—" "Not yet. Let the baby turn. Give it time." "I don't have time." "Marlee, listen to me. Breathe. Just breathe. Your body knows what to do. Trust it." She looked at him with wild eyes, but she listened, breathed through the urge to push. Let her body do its work. Minutes stretched into eternity. Ren checked again and felt the shift the baby had turned was crowning now. "Okay. Next contraction. You can push." "Thank God." Marlee gathered herself, and when the contraction came, she pushed with everything she had. Ren saw the baby's head, dark hair slick with fluid. "I can see her. I can see the head. One more push, maybe 2. I don't have 2 more in me." "Yes, you do. Come on, Marlee. Your daughter wants to meet you." Something in those words reached her. Marlee took a shuddering breath and pushed again. The baby's head emerged fully, and Ren supported it with trembling hands, checking for the cord around the neck the way she'd taught him. "Clear. One more," he said. "Give me one more." Marlee screamed and pushed, and the baby slipped into Ren's waiting hands, tiny and perfect, and covered in vernix. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the baby cried. The sound was the most beautiful thing Ren had ever heard. He cleared the infant's airways, tied and cut the cord with hands that somehow stayed steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him, wrapped her in the clean towel they'd prepared. "Is she?" Marlee couldn't finish. "She's perfect." Ren's voice broke on the words. "Marlee, she's absolutely perfect." He placed the baby in Marlee's arms. Mother and daughter looked at each other for the first time, and something sacred passed between them. Marlee was crying and laughing at the same time, examining every finger, every toe. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "Hi, sweet girl. I'm your mama. I'm right here." Ren stepped back, giving them space, and felt tears running down his own face. They'd done it. Against all odds, in the middle of winter, miles from help, they'd brought new life safely into the world. Outside, dawn was breaking. Through the cabin windows, he could see the storm had passed. The sky was clear and pink with sunrise, and the snow covered everything in pristine white. A new day, a new beginning. Marlee looked up at him. "Thank you. For everything. For being here. For not giving up on us." Ren knelt beside them and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. She gripped his finger instinctively, and he felt his heart crack wide open. "What are you going to name her?" he asked. Marlee looked down at her daughter, then out at the snow-covered world beyond the window. "Neve. It means snow. Because she came to us in winter, in this quiet place, when we both needed hope. Neve," Ren repeated. "It's perfect." The hours after Neve's birth passed in a haze of exhaustion and wonder. Ren tended to Marlee the way she'd instructed, helping deliver the placenta, checking for complications, making sure she was comfortable. She guided him through everything with a steady voice, despite her obvious fatigue, professional even in her most vulnerable moment. When he was certain both mother and baby were stable, Ren finally let himself collapse into the chair, by the fire. His hands were still shaking. His shirt was stained with blood and fluids he tried not to think about too much. But Marlee and Neve were alive, healthy, safe. They'd done it. Ash approached cautiously, sniffing the air with interest. Ren let the dog come close enough to see the baby, watched as Ash's tail began to wag slowly. The dog settled near Marlee's makeshift bed, as if understanding his job now included protecting this tiny new member of their family. "You should rest," Marlee said. She was nursing Neve, the baby latched and feeding with surprising vigor. "You've been up all night. So have you. I don't have a choice. She needs to eat every couple hours." Marlee stroked Neve's dark hair. "But you need sleep. I'll be fine for a few hours." Ren started to argue, then recognized the futility. He was running on adrenaline and willpower, and both were fading fast. "Wake me if you need anything at all." "I will." He stretched out on his sleeping bag, but kept his boots on just in case. Sleep came immediately, heavy and dreamless. When he woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and the cabin smelled like coffee. He sat up to find Marlee at the table, Neve sleeping in the cradle beside her. She looked tired but more alive than he'd ever seen, her eyes bright, color in her cheeks, a quiet joy radiating from her. "You made coffee?" he asked. "She slept for 3 whole hours. I couldn't believe it." Marlee poured him a cup. "I fed her, changed her, and she just went back to sleep. Like this is all perfectly normal." "Maybe for her it is." Ren accepted the coffee gratefully. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, exhausted, like I got hit by a truck." She smiled, "and happier than I've been in my entire life." They sat together in the morning light, watching Neve sleep. The baby was swaddled in the blanket Marlee had knitted, her tiny face peaceful. Every few seconds she'd make small movements, a flutter of her eyelids, a twitch of her lips, and both adults would lean forward, mesmerized. "I need to tell you something," Marlee said quietly. "I've made a decision." Ren's stomach tightened. "About Vermont. About everything." She set down her coffee. "I'm going to call my uncle, accept his help, go to Vermont with Neve." The words landed exactly as Ren had known they would, necessary, right, and devastating all at once. "That's good," he managed. "That's the right choice." "Is it?" She looked at him directly. "Because it doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm running away again." "You're running towards something this time. Family, security, a real future for Neve. But I'm leaving you. I'll be fine. Will you?" Marlee's voice was gentle but insistent. "Because I won't be. Fine, I mean. I'll be in Vermont with every resource I need, and I'll be thinking about this cabin every single day. About you. About what we built here." Ren stood and walked to the window. Outside, the world was white and clean and empty. What we built was temporary, a shelter from the storm. But the storm's over now, Marlee. Dallin's gone. You have family waiting. Neve deserves more than a cabin in the woods. She deserves a father. The word hit him like a physical blow. He turned slowly. "I'm not her father." "No, but you could be." Marlee's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "If you wanted to be. If you chose to be. That's not how it works, isn't it? You showed up when it mattered. You protected us. You delivered her. You're the only man she's ever going to remember being there at the beginning." Marlee stood carefully, walked to the cradle, and lifted Neve. "Come here. Hold your daughter. Marlee, hold her." Ren approached like he was approaching something holy. Marlee placed Neve in his arms, adjusting his hold until it was secure. The baby stirred but didn't wake, her tiny weight somehow both substantial and impossibly light. "Look at her," Marlee said. "Really look at her." He did. Neve's face was perfect miniature features that would grow into beauty someday. Dark lashes against pale skin. Tiny fists curled near her chin. She smelled like milk and baby soap, and something indefinable that made his chest ache. "I see her," he whispered. "Do you want to be in her life? More than anything, then come with us. To Vermont. Meet my family. Let them help you too. You don't have to stay in this cabin alone, Ren. You don't have to keep punishing yourself for the past. It's not about punishment. It's about—" He stopped, searching for words. "What do I have to offer you? I'm broke. No job. No prospects. I failed at everything that mattered before I came here." "You didn't fail at this. At us." Marlee took his free hand. "And maybe that's what matters now. Not what you did wrong 5 years ago, but what you're doing right today." Neve yawned in his arms, a tiny sound that somehow filled the entire cabin. Her eyes opened briefly, deep blue, unfocused, and seemed to look right, through him, to whatever it was babies saw when they looked at the world. "She needs me to be better than I was," Ren said. "You already are better. You just haven't forgiven yourself enough to see it." Outside, a bird called. Inside, the fire crackled. And in Ren's arms, Neve made a small, contented sound and fell back asleep, trusting completely in the arms that held her. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, I'll come. We'll figure it out together." Marlee's smile was like sunrise. Together. I liked the sound of that. And for the first time since he'd driven north with nothing but a dog and a desperate hope, Ren believed that maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 2 weeks after Neve's birth, Ren stood on the cabin's porch with a cup of coffee, watching the December sun rise over the snow-covered pines. Inside, he could hear Marlee humming softly to the baby, a lullaby her mother used to sing. The sound had become part of the cabin's rhythm, as natural as the crackle of the fire or Ash's contented snoring. They'd called her uncle 3 days after the birth. Harrison Sutherland had been overjoyed. his voice breaking when Marlee told him about Neve. He'd wanted to send a helicopter immediately, but Marlee had asked for time. Just a little more time in the cabin before they faced the world. He'd agreed, but with conditions. A local doctor made the trip out to check on Marlee and the baby. She'd pronounced them both healthy, marveling at the delivery. "You two did something remarkable," she'd said. "Not many people could have managed this." Ren had driven into Millridge yesterday for one final errand. At the county clerk's office, he'd filed paperwork, adding Marlee's name to the cabin's deed. Whatever happened next, Vermont, family, the future, this place would be hers too. Their shared refuge, proof that what they'd built here was real. Now, standing in the cold morning air, he thought about all the things he'd lost to get here, the marriage that failed, the business that collapsed, the years he'd never get back with Kieran. But he also thought about what he'd found: purpose, redemption, a chance to be the man he'd always meant to be. The cabin door opened behind him. Marlee stepped out, wrapped in a heavy coat. Neve bundled against her chest in a sling Ren had fashioned from sturdy fabric. "She wanted to see the sunrise," Marlee said. "She'd tell you that? I'm her mother. I know these things." She stood beside him, and they watched the light paint the snow pink and gold. "It's beautiful here." "It is. I'm going to miss it. We can come back anytime you want. It's yours now, too." She looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" "I added you to the deed. Half the cabin, half the land. It's ours." He kept his eyes on the horizon. "Figured you should have a place that belongs to you, no one else, somewhere you can always come back to if you need it." Marlee's eyes filled with tears. "Ren, you didn't have to." "Yeah, I did. This place saved both of us. Seemed right that we own it together." She leaned against him, careful of Neve between them. "Thank you for everything. For showing up, for staying, for being exactly who we needed." They stood like that until the sun cleared the trees, then went inside where it was warm. The day before they were scheduled to leave for Vermont, Ren made one last call to Kieran. "Hey, son." "Dad, I was hoping you'd call. How's the baby?" "She's perfect. Healthy. Already got her mother's stubborn streak." Ren smiled. "How would you feel about meeting her?" "And Marlee?" There was a pause. "Really? You want me to meet them?" "More than anything. We're heading to Vermont, but we'll pass through your area on the way. Thought maybe we could stop for lunch. If your mum's okay with it." "She will be. She's been asking about you. About them. I think she's happy you found something good, Dad." Something in Ren's chest loosened. Corinne was happy for him. After everything, she could still wish him well. Tell her thank you for everything, for Kieran, for the years we had, for not hating me. She never hated you. She was just tired of being alone while you were there. "I know. I get that now. Are you happy, Dad? Really happy?" Ren looked across the cabin at Marlee, who was changing Neve's diaper with practiced efficiency. At Ash, sprawled in front of the fire. At the cradle he'd built, and the spoon he'd carved, and all the small pieces of a life he'd constructed from nothing. "Yeah, son, I really am." On their last morning in the cabin, Ren woke early and walked through each room, memorizing details: the knothole in the floorboard near the fireplace, the way morning light came through the eastern window, the spot where Marlee had placed her pine branch decorations. He found the photograph he'd given her for Christmas, the one of the cabin at sunset. She'd framed it somehow, and it sat on the mantel. "I thought we should leave it here," Marlee said, appearing beside him with Neve. "So when we come back, it reminds us why this place mattered." "Why did it matter?" Ren asked. "For you?" She considered the question. "Because it was the first place I chose for myself. Not because someone told me to be there or because I was running from something, but because I wanted to be here. And then you showed up and chose it too. Chose me, chose us." She looked down at Neve. "This cabin is where we all became a family." Ren pulled them both close, Marlee and Neve, the two people who'd changed everything. I was so lost when I came here, thought my life was over, that I'd used up all my chances. And now I think maybe it was just beginning. They loaded the truck in the afternoon. Ren locked the cabin door and pocketed the rusty key that had started everything. As they drove down the access road, he looked in the rearview mirror and watched the cabin disappear among the trees. Marlee reached over and took his hand. In the back seat, Neve slept peacefully in the car seat they'd bought for the journey. Ash sat beside her, on guard even in his sleep. "Ready?" Marlee asked. Ren thought about Vermont, about meeting her family, about introducing Kieran to the woman and child who'd become his future, about all the uncertainty ahead and all the ways he could still fail. But he also thought about the compass in his pocket, about his father's belief that you just needed to know which direction was north. And he realized he did know. North was wherever Marlee and Neve were. North was showing up every day and doing the work. "Yeah," he said, "I'm ready." The truck headed south, carrying them toward winter sun and second chances. Behind them, the cabin stood empty but not abandoned, waiting patiently for the day they'd return home.